there is insufficient action to address the causes why these people are moving. And that is a very wide range of issues. There is insufficient peacemaking in the world. That's why wars continue forever or are never really resolved.
Well, of course, COVID has affected everybody in one way or another, but because refugees and people displaced in their own country are so vulnerable in the informal economy, vulnerable for all sorts of reasons of persecution and danger, they really have suffered immensely, partly because of closed borders, denial of access to asylum processes. That's perhaps an obvious one, but less obvious is that they are particularly affected by social and economic consequences. So the lockdown has meant in the informal economy loss of jobs, particularly for refugees and displaced people. Their children are out of school. They've suffered gender-based violence as families fracture. So the consequences are really profound, and we expect them to last for a very long time. Concerned that some countries may have adopted more rigorous or restrictive policies under the guise of COVID. I think as the months and maybe even the years go by, we'll see more evidence of this, but at the moment we are really urging countries to acknowledge their fundamental obligations to refugees, to ensure that those who are genuinely in need of protection from persecution and danger, conflict, even climate change, are going to be open to having the claims met properly according to the rule of law. About 340,000 people came in 2016, and this year we've had something in the order of 55,000. So there's been a dramatic decline, you're quite right. What are the reasons? I think it's because we've now got an EU agreement with Turkey. We've got very professional forms of border control. We've got greater publicity to the difficulties and the dangers of coming by sea or across borders, and more effective mechanisms for controlling the numbers that come in through borders in informal ways. I should say also, and much more positively, we've now got more mechanisms for coming in regular ways through labour mobility and recognition of professional qualifications, education, family reunion, community sponsorship. There are other ways of providing regular mechanisms into a country that don't require taking dangerous trips, particularly with children, and about half of those coming or over the years have been children. Well, there are divisions, there's no doubt about that. But of course, we're at an early stage. The pact has only been available to member states for the last few days. The United Nations Refugee Agency that I represent, we are really supporting the pact in its broad purpose. Solidarity, responsibility sharing, proper mechanisms for rescue at sea, proper monitoring, proper reception facilities, but done in a way that's genuinely an EU solidarity exercise consistent with the Compact on Refugees. We think that it's a basis for negotiations. Of course, it's not yet final, but we think that the challenge is to find that consensus, and we think that the mechanisms are in the pact which can lead to building that consensus. We're certainly optimistic.